I'm gonna admit, when this movie first started, I thought it wasn't even the movie. I mean, who else thought the same thing? Man, after that, I knew we were in for a wild one. So M3GAN, or M3GAN, is about this lifelike doll that's programmed to be a child's greatest companion. She can talk, listen, understand people and what they're feeling, almost like a real person. But they soon learned that creating M3GAN was the worst decision they could have possibly made. Yes, here we have yet another movie that proves the devastating effects that robots and AI can have. Guys in the future who are looking to develop something similar, please take note. So I don't think I was actually going to watch this movie. It didn't really interest me, like, even after watching the trailer of the movie, until I found out that it was actually a very huge success in the box office. Like, people apparently really liked it, and I saw that the theater that I was going in was also pretty packed as well. For some reason, people really wanted to see this one, either because it was released during school holidays, or the fact that it became a TikTok sensation like a couple of months ago or something like that, I heard. I don't know, I mean, I don't really follow that shit, so I don't know, but I did hear that it went viral. Either way, bottom line is, like, if you're in doubt whether or not you should watch this, or if you're like thinking, I don't know if this is gonna be good or not, like, kind of like what I was feeling that too before coming into this. It wasn't really one of the movies that I was particularly looking forward to, but I just kind of watched it anyway because I wanted to review it. If you're one of those people, then just don't think anymore and just go see this movie, because man, this movie is as good as some people are making it out to be. I can't put it any simpler than that. I had an absolute blast watching this movie. It was chilling and suspenseful at some parts, funny and bizarre in others, and the character dialogue was funny and clever. It was just wildly and weirdly entertaining, and it was also surprisingly emotional too, and had a great story that was also very captivating. It just had a mix of things that ultimately made it a really great watch, in my opinion, and I can't count how many times the audience in the theater that I was in were just laughing like hard as hell. some parts of this, wow, it was just so bizarre. And that's the thing, rather than being about the dark and graphic side of horror, this movie was more of a ridiculously fun horror than anything else. It is dark in a way, but it isn't super dark or like super scary, unlike probably a lot of other horror movies similar to this one. Okay, I'm gonna admit, personally, I don't know, but I'd assume so. Listen, I've never really been a huge fan of like doll movies or like movies of that nature, like Annabelle or Chucky and, you know, stuff like that, right? I've never really watched them because they never really appealed to me that much. Are they supernatural movies, like kind of supernatural in a way, like about spells and like witchcraft and like stuff like that and shit and ghosts and spirits? I don't know, but like if you know me, you know that I'm not really a big fan of supernatural horror and stuff like that, since it's not really real, so it just feels like they can do anything and there's like no limit to the stupid things that they can do. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass, and some of you guys will be like, what the fuck, man, you don't know nothing about these movies. And maybe I don't, but that's just how I feel. But with M3GAN, however, somehow it just feels so real. But it makes sense, since it just shows people how if you fuck up the robot's coding or programming or whatever, they can dominate the world. Not only in terms of being a physical threat to the human population, but there's also this huge theme in this movie about parenting and how by having robots, sure, it makes things easier, right? But it also makes us lazier and also might limit character development and social skills, especially to those, you know, younger individuals who are still kind of developing their brains, I guess, you know, as we see in this movie. Yeah. All scary things to think about and are real. There's a lot of foreshadowing like that in this movie. Sure, in the early stages there are a lot of talking and story elements, and it doesn't get to the good parts until later. Like, it's like a build-up process, right? But I mean, the early stages really help set the tone for the rest of the movie. Sure, there aren't like a whole lot of killings, and basically all of them were like off camera, right? Like off screen. But I definitely expected more, like more goriness and more violence coming into this, like a slasher film almost. But this is a movie where I guess it doesn't really need to have too much of that, because it's not really that type of movie. It's not actually that type of movie. M3GAN wasn't actually that type of doll until she kept learning and learning and became self-aware. But it would tickle our horror bones, you know, our horror senses, our horror tingles, whatever you call it, if it was more graphic than it was, you know. I did hear that the original script or the original writing or whatever was more brutal and more gory than the final piece, the final edit, like what we got. And an unrated version of the film might even release in the future as well. That's what I heard, like from online and stuff like that. Though I guess it is up for debate whether or not a more gory version would be better. So like I said, instead of being the more horrifying horror film, this film is one that is more psychological in a way and more story driven than just mindless horror and basic jump scares. And I appreciate that. It has a story that is also pretty deeply emotional in a way too, and something that can be relatable as well. I almost shed a tear. One scene, okay, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of did, okay. Once in one scene, like towards the middle, where it was very memorable and it was just a really great performance from the actors. Yeah, it was very convincing, and it all had to do with the themes of loss and grief. Another instance was towards the end. Now, the ending can divide some people, because some people, the only reason I say that is because some people might have wished it to end differently or thought it could have gone like a different way. I sort of got that vibe from the ending. For me though, I was begging for it to go a certain way, to, you know, like after learning about something prior, like earlier on in the movie. And this is what I'm talking about with the foreshadowing thing as well. And it actually does go the way I thought it would go. I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say that it does end on a pretty high note. Now, some people might say that it is predictable and that it's shit. Sure, it was predictable, but at least it went the way that I thought it would go to make it a better movie. You know, I almost thought it wasn't going to go that way, because just based off of the sheer amount of movies I've watched, like the countless amount of movies I've watched, where I just didn't like the direction it went, and that it just went a completely different direction than what I thought it should have gone to make it a different, like a better movie, I guess. But this one pulled through in the end. Ultimately, M3GAN is a perfect mix of elements that make it a top tier movie within its own rights. It's hilarious, wildly entertaining, and has a mix of horror and comedic elements to lighten the mood as well. And the actors were great. I had a fun time watching Ronnie Chang, and I just thought that the dialogue and the writing was sometimes very clever and just sometimes very real as well. Seemed like a lot of them had charisma, and that made the movie a lot more fun to watch as well. The only thing I have to say though is that it doesn't really feel like a lot happens, I guess. This mostly has to do with the very few killings and attacks that we get, as well as its relatively slow pace early on. It does take a while for the film to get going, I guess, and it is a pretty simple movie for the most part. At least that's what I thought, like when the movie ended. So I guess there could have been more, but maybe simple is best for a movie like this. And who knows, maybe this won't be the end of M3GAN. I'm going to give M3GAN an A-. I forgot to mention how crazy the doll looks as well. Like, it looks so realistic and so polished. I really like the character's design. I forgot to mention that. Like, it just, something about it, it's just so creepy. And just so, like, unnerving in a way as well. And I like how this sure, there are some jump scares. There are some kind of cheap jump scares. Maybe it's one or two, I guess. The first one, I didn't really jump, but I saw the guy next to me. He was like, he jumped a bit. I guess he wasn't ready for that. But yeah, instead of those cheap jump scares that, you know, a lot of cheap horror movies use, this one doesn't really go that route, which I'm glad. And it goes the route of like an epic fucking toy robot battle showdown. I'm not gonna give away more than that, but that's, yeah. Man, I mean, the more I think about it, I think now I'm like kind of like, okay, it was a good movie, but it was a bit too simple. But while watching it, I had a blast. So at least, you know, I'm gonna take that into consideration. But yeah, anyway, that's it, guys. Let me know what you think down below. Like and sub if you enjoyed. And as always, feel free to check out my previous videos. Until next time.